Hi everybody, good morning, welcome to Randy's Road Life. It is glad to see you with me today, or I imagine you are here with me today. You've seen the title, so we'll get into that in a moment. I just wanted to say that before we begin, please like and subscribe the videos. Give me that thumbs up please, so you can help me in the algorithms and these videos can get out a little better. Doesn't take a second, but to hit that little thumbs up. If you like the content that I do my best to provide you, then hit that little bell right there on the right side of your screen. That way you can get these notifications when I do post these videos. And obviously you see I don't post a lot of videos. You know, there's some YouTubers that they do this because that's their thing. It's not really my thing. So I just try to give you content that I feel is necessary as I imagine it in my head, I guess. So without further ado, let's get into it. You know, I don't have the fancy intro. Probably someday I might. I don't know. I don't know if it's really necessary. I really don't know how to do it. If someone could teach me, that'd be great, but I don't know how to do it. So for now, I'm not going to do it, and maybe in the future I will learn how to do it, and then I will. And then I'll have to figure out what kind of catchy intro I'm going to do. I have some ideas already rolling through my mind. I've thought about it, so can't say I haven't. So, flatbed. Are you guys curious about flatbed? What is it? What goes into being a flatbed driver? The vernacular, when you're dealing with truck driving, some of the old heads that we've been doing for a while, we call it a skateboard. Things like that, you hear that, you know, I'm pulling the skateboard, or I'm skateboarding, or whatever, you know. And you got many different types of open deck, right? You got the regular flatbed, which I have a 53-foot flatbed. It's a split axle. It's a split fixed axle, which means my axles are apart and they don't move. And then you got the 53-foot, which are the non-split axles, which are not fixed, and you can move those like you would a reefer or a dry van. Okay, you got the 48 foots, which are splits, but then you got the RGNs, which you see those, and a lot of those pull either heavy equipment, or you see them pull heavy equipment, you know, things like that. And then you got the step decks, which you see are like this, and those are for things that are a little tall, and then you have the lower angle on those, and you got other ones too. So it's open deck trucking, right? And they call it flatbedding or skateboarding, but it's open deck. But what kind of contradicts that term is when you get to a Conestoga. A Conestoga has a tarp apparatus that rolls, and you got different types of those. Some are manual locks in the front, some are hydraulics. I know here at Crocus Transportation, the owner here, I've said, spares no expense on his equipment. His equipment is very nice, and it's all custom. And he actually spent a ungodly amount of money on having his Conestogas customized to make it better for the drivers. I think his are hydraulic. One driver, I haven't been around the Conestoga trailers that he has, but a driver who does pull a Conestoga here was telling me about them and how nice they are and how easy they are to use. And those are also 53 footers. So now, to tarp or not to tarp, that's always a question. There are loads that are not tarped, and if you don't like tarping, you do Conestoga, which you just pull the fixed rolling tarp back and forth. But those have its own complications, because in order to load the front, you got to pull that all the way to the back, and then when you load the back half, you got to pull it all the way to the front. So, you know, there's that. And then you can't see the load with the Conestoga. So with my flatbed, I can see the load. I got my mirror set so I can see my straps, I can see my chains, and I can see how the tarp is moving, and if I can see if the load shifts or not. So I'm very adamant about my being vigilant on the load that I have, because it's in everyone's best interest, for me, around me, and the company and everyone I come in contact with, that my load is properly secured. And there's a lot that goes into that. And so in flatbedding, one thing you have to consider, you're going to do some work and you're going to get dirty. Okay, you're going to do work and you're going to get dirty. It can be hard and then it can be simple. I like flatbeding even in the hard parts, when you're sweating your butt off, or you're cold, or you get wet. I've been soaked, I've been frozen, I've been burning up hot in 100-degree weather, chaining steel. And so it goes to the two extremes and everything in the middle. You get dirty because your tarps get you dirty, and because they collect so much dirt and sand and road debris, especially during the winter time. And so there's that. And there's different types of tarps, 4-foot drops, 6-foot drops, 8-foot drops, and so on and so forth. You got you got your steel tarps, you got your lumber tarps and things. You have tarp thickness in terms of weight of the tarps, up to 120 pounds down to like 75, 70 pounds. So there's that. You cannot be afraid of work. All right. And the thing about flatbedding is I enjoy the work, right? And I think it does, it keeps me in shape and not getting, I guess, that trucker fat body that, we can get because of sitting around all day and doing nothing. Now, yeah, I don't secure and tarp things every day, because here at Crockett's, one thing they do, you will get a long load. They got 2,000 to 3,000 mile loads. I've had everything in from there to there. I've had loads that are 3,000 miles, and I'm serious, they were 3,000 miles. I went all the way from LA to Connecticut, 3,000 miles. All right, that was with the deadhead. And I've gotten loads that are 500 some miles. And so, even so, I'm ready for it, and I'm very strategic, and I view securement and tarping, my perspective is artistic, because I like I like the cleanness of it, and I like the correctness of it. I like to be visually pleasing in that regard. So straps are properly secured and straight. Chains are properly secured and straight, and everything is symmetrical. The load doesn't move or shift. Even the tarp, my tarps have to be also symmetrical and straight and bungee correctly on all sides and at the ends. And it bothers me if things are kind of out of place, or if they don't kind of match. And I think if you can get your securement and your tarping to be symmetrical and matching, I think you're doing a good thing, because it means it's the same thing all the way around. And consistency is highly important in this job. Some days you're not going to want to do it, but that's the job, so you do it. Do I want to get soaking wet and stuff? And no, not necessarily. But it doesn't mean I'm going to shy away from it. I'm going to get this job done. And really, one reason I like doing it is some of you guys who know me on this channel know that I'm a devout follower of Christ, and so I do this for the glory of God and for His kingdom, because I represent Him, and that really motivates me to do a great job. And I also represent my family, my wife, my kids, and so I want to do a great job. I want them to see the job I do, because I want my son and my daughter to see that if you do anything, right, you should always do it to the best of your ability, okay? And I want them to be able to see that, because that's an example we have to set. Even here in the trucking industry, those of us who do the YouTube channels, and even if you don't, we're always around truck drivers. They see what we're doing. If we're picking up a load, we're dropping a load at fuel islands, things that we represent. We represent truckers everywhere. And so when one person has a negative experience with the truck driver, he might take that out on the next one that could be that he never had an experience with, and so he takes it out on them. But anyways, it's not about that. It's about flatbed. And your choices are, and you need experience, and there are companies who will train you. It's like $500 a week, to go out with a trainer for 4 to 6 weeks. It just depends on the company. If you're dealing with TMC or Rail or EOHL, or there's a bunch of flatbed companies, Duvall, EW Wiley, Jordan, here at Caracas. They don't train here at Caracas, but you have to have at least 2 years experience and 6 months experience of flatbed. So, you know, the work involved in flatbed, like I said, it can be very dirty, and you go through a lot of gloves, and you have to have your boots, you have to have your PPE, you know, your hard hat, and your boots, and your vests, and things like that. And you got to be up for the task. You know, you got to be ready to lift that heavy tarp. You got to be able to. The chains are heavy. These are 20-foot G70 grade chains. They're transport chains. So, interesting thing that you guys should know is, if you're going to be a flatbed driver, right, you can see on the hook, right there's a little stamp that says G70. And on the chain, on the links, there's also should be a stamp that says G70. If it does not say G70, it is not an appropriate chain for flatbed, because it has to be a G70 chain, because G70 chains are transport chains. You cannot use a log chain, right? And some guys say, oh, I use log chains. It is not legal. It's not legal. And if that gets inspected, you'll be put out of service. So there's that. So the chain and the hook have to match. They both have to say G70. It doesn't matter if you have 3/16, a 3/8, 5/16, things like that. I run thick chains in this truck, 3/8. They're pretty thick chains, and they're heavy. They're 20-foot long, and they're heavy. The red ratchet binders, things like that. And you got snap binders, you got ratchet binders. You got different types of ratchet binders. You got the kind that ratchet like this, and the kind that ratchet from side to side. Now, I personally would rather have the kind that ratchet like this, up and down. Those chain binders right there they're a lot simpler to use, and they're easier to take care of. But they're expensive. Each one of those things costs over $60 a piece. So that's why you see more people use the other ratchet binders that ratchet side to side like this, and they have the threading on the sides where the hooks are at. So there's that. And there's equipment you have to have, right? Even for you, that companies are not going to provide you. Some companies ain't going to provide you a ladder. You have to pay for that. I have a telescoping ladder. It cost me $71 off Amazon. It works just fine. It's very light. It telescopes very small. I throw it right in my toolbox. Very easy to use. Your own gloves, you know, your boots, your hats, and things like that. And you also, gloves are like a commodity to us, because we go through some gloves, right? And you always try to use, okay, what kind of gloves am I going to buy today? I want to use a pair that are not going to get super wet and stay wet all the time, something that can dry, but also something that's going to tear up in the next couple loads. So there's those things you have to consider. The rawhide gloves are usually pretty good for that. They do get wet, your hands will get wet, but that part sucks, but they're more durable. But you can, I test gloves out to see which ones I'm going to use, and I've went through a lot of gloves. I have like 5 pair by my door over here, and one gets wet, I get another pair, So there's that. Keeping your hands dry, and I get hot, so it'll be 30 degrees out here, and I'll be down to my t-shirt. That happens. And now there are places that have indoor facilities when they load you, and sometimes they allow you to secure and tarp in there. Not all the time. Not all the time is that gonna happen. Like the last place I got loaded down there in Cato, Louisiana, they were about to close and they kicked me out, so I had to secure and tarp the load outside, and it was cold. So, and I was down to my t-shirt, and an awesome sheriff's deputy from Cato came and talked to me for quite a number of hours, and it was an awesome experience, and I loved it. God bless him for the conversation that we had, and that was great. So flatbedding, what goes into flatbedding is labor. So if you're in a truck driving because you don't want to work physical labor, this is not for you. Okay, I'm not saying that's bad and you're lazy. I'm not gonna say you're lazy, because you still got to drive, you still got to bump docks and close your doors. It's your prerogative. But if you don't want to hop up and down on the trailer, if you don't want to chain, if you don't want to take the time out to put in God-honoring labor that is involved in flatbedding or open deck trucking, this part of the profession is definitely not for you. Okay, you're going to get hot, you're going to get wet, you're going to get cold. That's going to happen. Okay, you're gonna come across loads you've never dealt with before, right? It is your job to figure out how that load gets secured, how that load doesn't move side to side, front to back, or up and down. It's your job. It's no one else's job to secure that load but you. You are completely responsible for how that load is secured. Okay? And so when you tarp, you're completely responsible for how the load is tarped. There are some businesses that state if the load is not completely tarped, it will be rejected once you get to where it's going. Yes, yeah, that's a fact. That can happen. So you have to make sure the load is completely tarped on all sides, front and back. All right, that means you have to bungee right? You have to use the right tarp. And so here at Crockett's Transportation, I have 2 types of tarps. I have 4 tarps, but I have 2 8-foot drops and 2 4-foot drops. That is perfect. Why? Because our loads are varying heights. Right? When I got small loads that are not when I say small loads that are not very tall, right? That are not over 4 foot tall, then I use my 4-foot drops. And I gotta fold those under sometimes, things like that. And I don't have to deal with a heavy 8-foot drop tarp that can weigh up to 120 pounds. I've dealt with 120 pound tarps. Not a big deal. Pick them up, move them, do your job. And those, if I have anything over 4 foot, then I have to use the 8-foot drop tarps. And sometimes you have to climb on top of the load. And it's almost like climbing a mountain sometimes and getting up on your ladder or walking across stuff that is not made to walk across. As far as like they have slats, or they have the walking is like walking across rafters. I've done all of that. And you got to figure out how to maneuver across the load and how to tarp that, right? Do I use edge protectors? Do I use moving blankets to protect my tarps? So there's that. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this, but don't shy away from it. If it's something you're considering, don't shy away from it. What the biggest thing you got to consider, okay, is within yourself, right? It's all about the work ethic that's inside you, right? And how much work you are willing to do. All right. So think about this. It's raining, it's freezing, it's super hot. You got to secure it and tarp a load. All right. Even if it's not, you got to secure it and tarp a load. All right. The load is large. It's hard to walk across. You got to use ladders. You're up and down. You're the only one there doing the work. All right. You got to figure it out. Okay. How do I secure this? How do I tarp this? You got to stand back for a second and take in the totality of the circumstances you're dealing with. Right? You got to look at the load. You got to be strategic. And you got to be serious. You're going to come across flatbed drivers, and it's like any other industry. Some guys do their jobs to the maximum of their ability, and some guys don't. Some guys just flat out lazy. Doesn't matter the industry you're in. All these people exist, all right? And you see these tarps flapping down low like a cape, or you see securement just flapping in the wind. And it's like you can see that in your mirrors. I'm just letting you guys know that if you're driving, or if you see a flatbed driver and his straps are flapping in the wind, he can see that. And to me, that's really irritating to me. If my straps are flapping like that, there's a certain amount of movement a strap is going to do, right? You can't really stop that all the time. You don't want to tighten your straps too tight, because then they have a higher degree of breakage. So you got to be careful about that. Your straps shouldn't be so tight they sound like a guitar string. Okay, that can be problematic. Your tarp can break under those circumstances, because these 4-foot straps, if you get the good ones, are rated at 5,400 pounds. But the DOT under the FMCSA does not rate them at 5,400 pounds. They're rated, I think, at 4,700 pounds, right? And then the lettering has to be shown on the strap during securement. If it's not, it's half of the 4,700 pounds. So you got to be aware of that. So there's all these circumstances involved. You have to know your job, and you are required to know all these things. All right, you're required, because you are the one doing the work and you're the one responsible for that load. Once they put it on your trailer, you've accepted it. It's yours until you deliver it, right? So everything in between, from the loading to the unloading, is your responsibility completely, all right? What I do is I watch everything that occurs. If I don't like something, I will state it right there. Like one of my last loads, I was hauling aluminum ingots. It was a heavy load, but it was smaller blocks, and it was a band that held a block together, and one of the bands were broken, so I rejected that stack, and they gave me another one. You just got to be aware of those things, right? They said you didn't want it. I was like, no, that is a hazard. It's a moving hazard. It's a securement hazard. I don't want that. Can you replace that stack, please? And if they wouldn't replace it, I just would have been one stack short, because I would not have taken it. Because it creates a hazard, and your securement only works so much, right? It's only worth so much, and you have to be cognizant of the maximum capacity your securement can handle. All right, the FMCSA states that you got to have enough securement to handle at least half of the working load limit, aggregate working load limit of the entire load. So if my load is 40,000 pounds, it has to be secure with at least 20,000 pounds of securement. All right. There's other factors involved dealing with each item, and how many straps you have to have per item, depending on how long it is, and things like that. All those things are also considered. But do you only want to have 50% of the capacity strapped or chained? I don't. And in my opinion, I still don't think that's safe enough. I think you should throw an extra two straps. That's something I do. I will use an extra chain. I will throw an extra strap or two on a load, because it gives me peace of mind to know that not only did I do this properly, but it's safer than what the FMCSA requires. And then people around me are safe. All right. I'm safe, so my load's not going to shift and come through my cab, because loads can't do that. Suicide coils, or you see those big coils, some weigh up to 40,000 pounds or more, some are less. I've hauled several coils this year, none of which were over, I think, 21,000 and some change. And in dealing with suicide coils, if they're not secured right and you have to hit those brakes, boom, they're going to break the chains. They're going to roll over your coil racks, and they're going to crush right through your sleeper. They're going to crush the sleeper. Believe me, that thing is like a rolling boulder down a hill. It's no give. Okay, so it has to be secured properly. So you got a 40,000 pound coil or a 35,000 pound coil. How many chains are you going to use? Right? Your chains are worth $6,700 on the working load limit a piece. If you have G70 3/8" transport chains. All right. So what I do on a load like that, you got some guys that use 5, some guys use 6. I use 7. Okay. I use 3 across, 1 in the middle, 2 right there, and then 2 going to the front and to the back. And I throw a strap over the top. Sometimes I crisscross the straps on top. So the it's side to side movement is also taken care of. So it's well over the limit that is required for the FMCSA, right? So you got to figure, and with 7 chains at 6,700 pounds a piece, and plus 1 to 2 straps. Yeah, I mean, hopefully this coil can't go anywhere. And then even after that, once you take off, you have to stop within the first 50 miles. Okay, stop within the first 50 miles. And after that, it's every 150 miles or 3 hours, whichever one comes first. So, and that's to check your securement, check your tarps, make sure everything is good, make sure your straps are still tight, make sure your chains aren't moving, and you make sure your load hasn't shifted at all. And so the one thing that really I like, and I've always liked about open deck flatbedding and things like that, it's not a boring job. It's not a boring job. And I like the idea that my mind is stimulated in a way that it tells me that I'm useful, I'm important, and that I'm doing something that is very beneficial to everyone around me. All right, and it makes me feel good doing open deck work because of all those factors. And I'm a physical person just by my nature. I'm very physical about things, to a point of physically aggressive, not like trying to be violent, so like that, but I like to do things with my hands. I don't shy away from work. And so flatbed open deck trucking really suits me very, very, very well. I've done reefer and done tanker and I've done dry van. It's like, that's all cool. And even tanker has a lot of things involved in it, depending on if you're hazmat, not hazmat, and that has its complications. And then, tanker drivers have to go through a lot, believe me. There's a lot you don't see that tanker drivers have to go through. So that is also a very involved part of the industry, are the tanker drivers. Please respect those guys, because pulling a tanker is not easy. You have to be on your A game when you take off, when you stop, when you go around turns and curves and things like that. Tankers can be very dangerous. All right, in the wrong hands, very dangerous. And people who are very lackadaisical when it comes to that. So flatbedding, guys, those are the things to consider. Please hit me up. Leave me comments, ask me questions. I will leave my email in the descriptions. My email is always in the descriptions. Matt633LLC@yahoo.com. Matt, MATT 633LLC.com. What does that stand for? Matthew chapter 6 verse 33. But first, seek the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Go to Matthew chapter 6 and see what Christ was talking about, and you'll understand why I named my business after that chapter and that verse. All right. So with that, I hope you get your guys' questions. I hope you get your guys' comments. You want to add things I haven't said. Maybe I missed something you want to add in there. Please do. If you have any tricks or tips in flatbedding that you would like me to know, I want them, because I like learning more stuff. I'm going to have some tips and tricks for you guys. My wife is going to be getting in the truck soon. I'm going to have her record me doing certain things to show you guys how to minimize some of the stress in open deck driving. Little tips, and they're not really hacks, but tips so you can do it better and do it more comfortably and not have to make mistakes or redo your work or things like that, because we have all these circumstances involved, whether it's windy. And I'm going to tell you this: folding or tarping a load, folding your tarp or tarping a load in the wind and rain, it's not easy. It's not easy, man. It is a challenge, and you will get aggravated and you'll be frustrated. And tarping in the wind is a pain in the butt. I'm gonna tell you that. But there are tricks to that. Okay, there are tricks that you can utilize for that. And I want to show you these things. Depends on under those circumstances. So, and whether it's throwing straps, chaining, things like that, I want to show you little tips. Hopefully that will stimulate you in that regard to want to, tackle these loads and do a great job and see your handiwork. That's the reward, other than the paycheck, is to see your handiwork, how clean and how artistic and symmetrical it looks. But not just that, how safe it is. So with that, this has been Randy's Road Life. I have been your host, Randy. I hope to speak to you again on another video here shortly. Like I said, my beautiful wife Laquita will be in the truck with me. I think the day before Valentine's, I will stop by, swoop her up, and spend time with my kids and stuff like that. And it's gonna be Valentine's. We want to spend some time together in the truck for a couple weeks. I kidnap her. I try to keep her longer than 2 weeks, but she don't like being away from the kids a long time, and so there's that. But you'll see. And I hope that we will learn stuff together. I hope there are things I can teach you, and I hope there are things you can also teach me. So with that, I love you guys, and may the peace and strength and grace that is only found in Christ Jesus be with you forever and always. Deuces.